All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I'm here with an old friend, and I'm just super excited to have this dialogue. I've known this young woman for many years, and we've had surface level conversation, but I've never really gotten her whole story and perspectives, and so I'm super excited. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Courtney Kramarz. Courtney, for the people that don't know you, you worked here for several years. You were really part of the growth and the early days where we really started to put things in order in this location. You were a massive factor in that. As you know, I was not very organized by nature, and I feel like you're the type of person that has to list things out. You have to put it all in order. You have to make your list look correct. If you mess up one thing, you're going to scribble it out and start all over. And that was a massive help in the early days to getting us online. But I don't want to start this podcast any different than I start all of my others. Before we talk about how we met, your role here, who you are today, anything like that, I want to take the story all the way back. I want to know, where were you born and raised? What were you like as a young girl? What were the things that were really influential to you? What did you think life was going to have in store for you? All that will slowly build up your story, and then we'll get to where you are today.
Sounds good. I was born here in Michigan, raised in Brighton for my whole life, just around here. I'm being awkward already.
No, you're not at all. It's just, when's the last time someone sat down with you and asked you to tell your life story to that person?
Honestly, never.
Exactly. So it's you can't be prepared for this. And you're a very, you like to plan. You like to be prepared. You want to study all your notes. And this is open format. So it's super difficult for you. But just realize there are no right answers. Just think back, and you're a young kid. Did you have older siblings? Are you the oldest? Did you have siblings? What was your family life like? Did you come from a very structured family? Did you come from a religious family? What were the things that were shaping young Courtney? What can you even remember from your childhood as pivotal things?
Yeah, I was an only child, so it was very strict growing up. I had a lot of friends, but still, I don't know. I feel like you're always lonely being an only child. You're always trying to go out and do more stuff, but very strict family. My dad, he was in the military, so he has a little bit of that. Pretty strict. My mom worked too, so they were both working, and just very school oriented, all of that. My mom tried to raise me as Catholic and all of that, so I did go to school all day. I did sports, I went to catechism, all that stuff, so very, very structured. Basically, I'm used to my whole day being busy and just coming home and going to sleep, so.
Did you enjoy that when you were young? And when you look back, do you think it's a big part of why you're able to handle structure so well now? Maybe some of the OCDs or patterns of behavior that you have, do you think it came from your childhood? You mentioned the word strict there about 6-7 times. Did it feel detrimental at the time? Or are you just really exaggerating the point that I knew where I was going to be, I knew exactly how things would work? Do you value the type of childhood that you have? Do you think it gave you any advantages? Do you think it created any type of struggles or difficulties? It sounds like you had a pretty traditional family. There was religion in the home. Your father had a military background. I'm kind of trying to picture what that family would have looked like. Talk about the pros and the cons of what young Courtney experienced, and then maybe the perspective now of, do you view it differently now?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's important because growing up, it was always about kind of planning, you go to school, then you're going to go to college, got to set up for what job you want, all of that. So everything, as much as I plan, I know you can't have a plan. Nothing ever goes according to plan. It's crazy to think like that, but they planned as much as we could together. I mean, they always took everything that I was interested into consideration, so it was important to my parents for me to do things that inspired me, things that were important to me. Always played sports. They spent all their time on me. My dad would drive me everywhere, sports, all of that. I would get out of school and I would play for like teams that were 2 hours away, and I'd go to practice every single night, and he would drive me, sit there for the whole practice, and drive me home, and I wouldn't get home till like 11 o'clock at night. And he would do that every single day, and he worked all day too and would travel out of town and have meetings in other states and drive back just to drive me to practice. So they were great in that aspect. They really wanted me to do a lot and experience a lot, but definitely planned a lot. So
it sounds like you had a super loving mother and father. You were kind of like the light of their world is the story I'm hearing, and you see that a lot with parents, especially with an only child. Like that child becomes the focal point. It's like, your happiness and life kind of revolves around that person. And do you think you gained a lot from athletics? What were the things that shaped young Courtney, like a part of your identity? If you could go back and describe, the first, I guess, the 8-year-old version of you or 10-year-old up to like maybe 12, 13, what were the things that were a big part of your identity when you were young?
I think sports were 100% the biggest thing for me, just because it teaches you like to have confidence, which is something I've always struggled with. Like I've gotten a lot more confident through sports. It makes you interact with people, teaches you discipline, because you're not going to be good at something if you don't have any discipline. You have to keep trying, and even if you're failing, you keep trying and going, because I failed a lot, but then I got so much better after I learned from it. Like if you can put your pride aside and just keep practicing and keep working at something, you can be really good at it. Another thing I feel like sports are important for is like, I don't know how to say it in a good way, but I feel like even like working now, I've gained a lot of knowledge from sports that I think is important for like people who haven't played sports. I feel like I work with a lot of like, we say it at work and it sounds bad, but like the participation award kids, like people that don't know how to interact, like they can't take constructive criticism, things like that, even though you're just having a conversation. I feel like those are important skills.
So it's probably like the accountability and being held to a standard that like a team environment creates. And like having a coach that pushes you, like accountability usually doesn't feel very good when you're not meeting the standards, but it is so good for you. And that's like a relationship that we're losing track of. It's like, yes, it doesn't feel good when you're confronted by a coworker or a boss and they're saying, this is where you are falling short. But it is the blueprint for success. Is you have to take the constructive criticism. You have to acknowledge your part in it. You have to not point fingers outward and say, oh, yeah, well, what about this? That's not relevant to the point being made. The point being made is you need to step up first. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like that is one of the best things. It feels like that's what you're speaking to, that you were able to pull from sports at a young age.
Right. And it's like how you react to a situation, because you know what you're signing up for when you show up to a game, but you don't know every single scenario. You don't know who's up to bat, like where the ball's going. It's just all these different situations, and I feel like you can take that through the rest of your life for work, as just being ready for anything. And like you said, how do you respond to stuff? You can either throw a tantrum about it or be upset about it, or you can accept it, take responsibility, and learn from it and be better. So I think that's important.
So when you were young, you said you struggled with confidence. Did sports start to give you something to like feel more proud of? A lot of times kids, if they excel in sports, or even if they just feel like they're a part of the team, it gives you something to stand on. It gives you a ground to be like, hey, this is why I can feel good about myself. Because everybody at some point has to find something that allows them to feel confident. The whole world is like a constant comparison, and you're looking at, what does this person have? Are they better looking than me? Are they this? Are they that? And it's like, that just destroys most people. They never get their confidence going. But sports is something that, it's like, if you can at least stand on that, it's like the doorway into starting to build real confidence. Do you think that was a big part of shaping you as a young girl?
100%. I not only like building on my own skills, but building on my own knowledge, and then having a team is so nice. You have a team of people that are completely there for you, that you work with, that are rooting for you, and it just helps so much with my confidence, 100%.
So what were you like at school? Because looking at your family life, I picture a kid that really cared about schoolwork and wanted to get good grades and, didn't want to disappoint her father or let the family down type of deal. That's kind of what I'm picturing. But how did you do in school? Was it stressful for you at a young age? In this country now, we talk about there's like an anxiety epidemic. Like people are just crippled by every task, like creates stress. Did you experience that when you were young, from the pressure to do a good job? Or did you just, accept the responsibility and you did the best you could? Just describe that aspect of your life.
I mean, I felt the stress, but I was also used to being under pressure. I think that's also from sports. And I almost learned to kind of enjoy being under pressure. But to be honest, like in elementary school, middle school, even high school, I really didn't have to try. So it was a little bit of a learning curve to go to college, and then like, this is a skill that you really want to do, and you're probably not good at it because you've never done anything like it before. So I don't know. I always feel like I had just like a base level knowledge. I mean, I would have to study. Like there were some times like, I mean, getting older, obviously, like going into more complex things, had to study more. But for the most part, I didn't really have to try much, which sounds terrible, but
Doesn't sound terrible. If it's the truth, things came more natural to you. You didn't have to work as hard as maybe some people did. Doesn't sound terrible. It's just everybody has different levels of intelligence. Everybody has different levels of comprehension and their ability to retain information. So if it came easier to you, I'm almost fascinated you said that, because most of the people I know in life that are incredibly organized and regimented and everything like that, they built that because things didn't come very easy to them. So they had to learn how to how am I going to memorize this information? How am I going to put this? Whereas like on the opposite side of the spectrum, things came so easy to me growing up that, to be honest, I was like lazy as hell. I had terrible organization, terrible. Like I didn't put anything in order because I could almost just show up somewhere and just do a good job. Like I could not pay attention all week long and still crush my test. And what I realized is that was a huge flaw, because I didn't build all of the skills that would have come with the fact that if it was hard for me, I would have had to put in more effort, and it probably would have been better. How in the world, or were you like that in middle school and high school? Because I know you as like so organized, you're able to track tasks, you're able to do all these things. Did you build that later on, or did you have that part even at a young age?
I feel like I might have had the building blocks for it. Like I always liked to be organized. Like I was always the person, everything was color coded. I would have like every color pen, all that stuff, highlight stuff. But I don't think I really got a grip on it until I went to college, because I showed up and the first like couple weeks were terrible. I definitely, like you said, had the lazy moments. I showed up on the first day to my intro to nursing class, didn't read the syllabus. I'm like, syllabus week, I don't have to do anything. This is I'm not going to try. We had a surprise test on the first day. So I learned real fast that you can't be like that. So I did have to try a lot in college. Had to study a ton. It was kind of a shock getting like my first test back and I didn't get an A. I was like offended, even though it was my own fault. So then I really had to ramp it up. I just had to have discipline. I would start checking out the library study rooms and just sit in there by myself for like 6 hours. I would have to write everything out. Like I can't memorize things, but I went from feeling like, oh, I've got this. I think a genuinely smart person from school, and then I got to college and I'm like, oh, these people are way smarter than me. I feel stupid.
Or maybe they've already built those skills ahead of time. Because it's not just intelligence that separates people that are successful in like a college setting. There's a variety of factors. So maybe they had certain aspects down that you had to put more work in. And again, let's say you were way less intelligent growing up. Maybe you would have had to been so much more regimented and disciplined and focused on what it takes to get a task, fully prepare for any unknown, that for the surprise test that might pop up. You read the syllabus, you break it all down. Maybe you would have done those things. Your confidence, or maybe a little bit of arrogance, actually caught you there. I don't think it was an intelligence thing. So let's talk about like middle school, high school. When did you start to put together a vision of like, what are you going to do in this world? Who do you want to be? What do you want to become? Do you remember it changing over time? Like, do you remember something that when you were young that you're like, hey, this is what I think I might do? And then when did it shift? Why did it shift? Like, start to build, what did the young Courtney believe the life had in store for her?
So my dream job, you might laugh, was always to be an architect and interior decorator. Hence this room even that we worked on. But I always wanted to do that all the way up until probably high school. And there were a couple different factors that came in. My dad was actually a combat medic in the military. So he had a little bit of a medical background, and he actually always wanted to be a doctor. So he would always tell stories, always talk about it, and it sounded really interesting, but I was unsure of it at the time. I was like, I want to be a decorator. I think it'd be so fun. And then my grandpa actually had a terrible accident too, where he almost died. They had to pick him up on a life flight helicopter, and it was a really scary couple days. So between all of that and his stories and everything, and they kind of convinced me otherwise. And also with I liked having the job security kind of aspect of that too. Like you're always going to need nurses. You never know what happens with the economy. You don't know if the housing market's good or bad or anything like that. So between the bit of security, and then I ended up finding out I actually love people where I thought I didn't like people at all. And then even starting to work here, I got to talk to different people all the time, all day. And I'm like, I actually really like people. I didn't think I would because I'm always alone as an only child. But then I came here and worked here, and I liked interacting with a lot of different people.
That is fascinating to me that you just said you didn't think you really liked people, or that because you, since the day I met you, have been super bubbly and good energy and willing to have conversations with anyone. And you would anyone that knows you from this building would describe you as super personable, friendly. Like here's a shocking thing for people that are listening to this, especially if you're one of Courtney's friends. I can never remember a day where you had a bad attitude, ever. In 4 years of you working here, no matter what was going on in your life, no matter what task I was going to present you with or what thing that I needed to get better at, or I'm sure I did things that were frustrating. I don't remember a single day where you had a negative attitude in a 4-year period. So I am so fascinated to hear the words I didn't really think I was a people person. If that is true, then how in the world were you so seamless in your transition? When you worked here, that you had all the personality with people. I don't think there's anyone that would have ever come here that'd been like, oh, I really don't like that front desk person, Courtney, you have. How were you able to integrate into that role? How did you, I don't want to bounce all over your story, but first of all, I can't remember, how did you get an interview here? And then if you thought that was your personality type, how in the world were you able to take up a role like that and make it so easy?
Well, when I first started here, I actually was just filling in for a friend for just a week. I don't know if you remember, but I filled in, and my only job was to just clean the bathroom. So I was like, yeah, I can just pop some headphones in and just walk around and do my thing and clean, and then I'll be done. And then I think one day you didn't have someone for the desk either, and I sat at the desk and started checking people in. It was really awkward, and I just started building on those skills. I'm like, I don't know. I don't like to be bad at things. So I really wanted to practice, be a great people person, be great with customers, and just kind of started building from there. Because I've always been really quiet, kind of awkward. Even in school, I was talking about this the other day with friends. I used to sit in the library for lunch and eat because I didn't want to be in the cafeteria for a little bit. I would always be reading a book or doing something of my own, doodling, art, and I would just eat my lunch in the library to be away from people.
Why?
It was just overwhelming to have that many people at once around me, and just the stress of it. I don't know where to sit. I don't know who to sit with. I don't know who to interact with, so I'd just go there instead.
Do you think it was because of the solitude of your childhood? The fact that, you're an only child, you probably learned to appreciate your own space. You learn to, have some of the peace that comes with it. Loneliness comes with that. But if you can find peace in being by yourself, sometimes it is difficult to want people around you. Do you think that was the correlation?
I think so, because I don't know, I just would bond with people on a different level. So I, growing up, had 1 to 2 really, really close friends, best friends. And then I had a lot of friends, but not at the same level. I liked to have something a little bit more in depth. So I did the balance of just kind of keeping quiet, keeping to myself, and just having the small inner circle.
Well, that is so fascinating that because if someone told me to describe you, I would have said super outgoing, confident, because like I think it takes confidence to speak to strangers and like interact with you have no idea what problems they're going to bring you. You have no idea. The range of people is extreme. You get some extremely polite people, you get some extremely rude people, like, and you just took over a role like that and integrated into it. That is fascinating to hear your story from that perspective, because I never would have considered that. I would have considered that your whole life growing up, that you easily integrated into social groups and you liked people and it was easy for you to talk to people and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, to rewind the chapter a little bit. So actually, there's one question I want to ask before I bounce around. Did you make the right decision not going into interior design and pursuing that passion?
I think I did make the right decision. I know, like, everyone will complain, like, oh, what if, but I think I definitely made the right decision. I love my job. I love what I do. I know everyone can have complaints about their job, but overall, I love my job. I love the people I work with. I'm very happy.
That's great to hear. That's a big thing. What you don't want is to go through life with a regret of like, what if I would have done this? What would my life look like? What would my freedoms look like? What would my schedule look like? You don't want that to haunt you. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are haunted by that, and they have to like put it into a back filing cabinet in their mind and like never consider what life would have been like had they gone for it. You're in the high school, you start to look to the future, you let go of that dream, you start moving towards the medical field. Once you started to commit, did you already know, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to college for it. I'm going to go to this. How did you pick which college you're going to go to? Just kind of walk through all that stage. Plus, how old were you when you started working here?
I had to have been like 16 or 17. Thinking somewhere around there.
So you were still in high school when you were working at the front desk here?
Yes.
Got it. And then at that point, you're like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get this. Okay, start to build up that part of your story. So you make the decision, Courtney's not going to go interior design or architecture. I'm going to go into the medical industry. How does that shape who you are? How does that shape the task you're doing, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, and actually it was nice because in high school they offered like different kind of career classes. So I did do like a intro to nursing or healthcare type class where we had clinicals and things like that, and we got to interact with patients, and it was really awkward for me to start to try to interact with strangers, but I ended up really liking it, like getting to know them, getting their story, and I think I've kind of built on that since then. But I did that class and kind of knew I enjoyed it, so I started applying for colleges and realized how hard it is to get into nursing school and like all the different levels to it. Like you can get into a school, but you don't necessarily get into the school of nursing. So I ended up finding U of Michigan-Flint, and they had this direct admit program, and it was their first year doing it. So I actually applied when I was still in high school and already got accepted.
And what timeline is this?
This was like summer of junior year, I think, going into senior year.
Which is like 2018, 17? Like I'm just trying to put it on.
I graduated in 2016, so this is probably like 2015 that I was sending out the applications, things like that, doing the interviews. And I actually ended up finding out, I want to say it was either fall, like going into 2015, that I already had gotten in. And I'd gotten into other schools too, but I liked the idea that the seat was saved for me. It was kind of just like a for sure thing. Because my stress was I would go through all these prereqs and then I'd be stuck just kind of like in a waiting period at a huge school. And I know myself, I knew I wasn't going to pay attention in a class full of 500 kids. So as much as I wanted to go to a big school, I wasn't going to do well at that. So I chose to go with like a small class size where there's only like 20, maybe 30 people in the class. And I think it worked out for me really well.
And is that where you met Brock? Didn't you meet him through, or did you guys go in together? Like, he's a huge part of your life. So how did that part of the story come in?
So he was actually at the interview for this direct admit, and I had no idea. Apparently he had a crush on me and just never said anything. But he ended up being in my clinical for my first class in nursing school. And he was sitting in front of me, and I started bugging him. I was the one that made the move first.
He was there to study for school. You were there to be like, well, who's this guy in front of me first? And then I'll figure out what I got to do with this course. So at that period, you're working here, you're in school. That's difficult. I mean, a lot of people struggle just to manage what college or any type of program has in its responsibilities. But you were also here. You were running reports. You were helping. I'm a all over the place type person. I'm always like dreaming and vision. What about this? And can we do this? And can we do that? That period of your life, was that a super stressful period? Did you enjoy being able to multitask and be able to because you were a big part of the front end operations here while going to college, while figuring all these different, while juggling a relationship and da 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 da. What was that period of your life like after you graduated high school?
I mean, it was, I guess you could say anything could be stressful, but I didn't mind it at all. I loved it. I loved working here. It was still to this day my favorite job. Sorry to my manager, but this one was my favorite. But I really enjoyed it, and it was always something different. I never did. I mean, I know I had the same couple things that I was responsible for, but we would always be having brainstorming, like coffee shop days where we'd be making my lists all the time. Always doing something different, getting to meet all the different people that fly in from out of town was really interesting. I'd get to clean the place. I'd get the little bit of solitude to myself with the music, and then get to interact with tons of people at the front desk. It was just really interesting. But it was a little stressful, I think just because the distance. I lived in Flint at the time, so I would drive all the way from Flint to here. I lived in Fenton for a little bit, but Fenton to here and then Flint to here, back and forth. But it wasn't too bad at all. You were so flexible with my hours, so it really didn't stress me out too bad at all.
So one part of your story that I kind of want to tell, and then we'll continue to, when you first came in here, I was really I can't place it exactly on the timeline. Like, do you know how long we were in this building when you first came here, so I can kind of figure out where we would have been?
You were barely here. You had just moved in, maybe 2 months before.
So when you first got here, was it just the 2 units? Was it just the walls were all white? We only had this door and this one. Master Juan wasn't there. Bent Yoga wasn't here.
Nope.
Wow.
And that wall wasn't even taken down. It was tiny in here. It was really, really tiny.
Wow. So you were here right after I got this place.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what was it like, I guess, just this part of the story, and then we'll skip, but from where we are now, from where you came on board, are worlds apart. Do you remember the evolution process and remember when we expanded and brought in Master Juan and then we added in Bent, and then I'm having dreams of how do I buy this building? Do you remember, do you think you pulled any lessons from that period, is I guess what I'm asking, or is because you're witnessing in real time an entrepreneur and working alongside him trying to figure out how do we expand this? How do we grow this? How do we, become more profitable? How do we get the resources so that we can upgrade these aspects of the gym? And you were a very big role in that. And that's why I tell a lot of people, if you hadn't been in the position that you had at this academy, I actually think we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today, because I am the type of person that is all passion and energy and vision and kind of all over the map. But I kind of needed somebody to dial that energy into James, can we put this into a list and then work on the list? You know what I mean? And so what was it like for you having a role like that, where you had really, under me at the time, you were kind of second or third in authority of the entire academy? You were overseeing even the coaches. What was it like to work hand in hand with that? And did you believe that I would create something like this? Did you think these things were going to come together, et cetera? Just talk about that period of your life and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, it was awesome. This is what we always dreamed that it would become, but I didn't know timeline wise how long it would take, if it would happen. But it was just so awesome because you had all these ideas, and we would just sit down and make list after list after list. But then we would sit down and I would kind of reel it back, okay, but how can we make this happen? What can we budget? Where can we cut costs here to spend stuff here? Stuff like that. So I think, like you said, the organization that I have really came into play, where you would have the huge ideas and I'd be okay, but we need to do this, this, and this to make it happen. So it was kind of the perfect yin and yang balance for us to be working together to kind of get to where you wanted. But it was just, I don't know, this is so cool where it is right now.
I'm shocked though that you had the skills and the tools to be able to do that, because you didn't go to business school. You didn't like, you were kind of just thrown into this world where you're working right alongside this person that's just like all over. And you were able to like provide direction, give suggestions, point, like, you know what? I think we actually tackle this first. And if we get this out of the way, where does that come from, Courtney?
I don't know. It just like felt right. Like I like to dive into stuff, and I just kind of went with it. I mean, my dad always was in business, but he was more so like the marketing and sales like that. But I don't know. I just kind of, I don't know.
Because like okay, before we change the chapter, I'm super happy that you love your job, because you have an incredible asset or potential to yourself that, like, alongside a high level entrepreneur, like way bigger than a company like this, what you provided to this business entity is like priceless. Like, that's where like CFOs and people like that get paid the most ridiculous figures, because they can take that like entrepreneurial passion and energy and dial it into a spearhead and say like, okay, but this is the next business decision. You have a lot of this like executive energy. And I almost thought to myself that I knew you were going through nursing school and stuff, but I was like, I actually see Courtney at one point working alongside a team of executives and doing like high level business strategy and things like that. But anyway, to turn the chapter, so you start going to school to be a nurse. When did you start figuring out that you really enjoyed it? Did it come easy to you, or once you got your like organization stuff in order? And then when you started to get near to graduation, like, what was the feeling? Because like, you're about to go into the real world now. You're about to go into like saving people's lives. Like, you have a job where if you make a substantial mistake, it could cost someone their life. That's a crazy world. Kind of walk me through that.
It was pretty stressful at the start. I mean, because you go to nursing school and you do clinicals, but in your clinical, you'll get to do like 1-2 med passes in your whole day. And then you just kind of like walk around as like the creepy shadow to the real nurse. You just kind of walk around and try to see stuff. So it was definitely really stressful, but the lack of like all of the hands-on really stressed me out. So I ended up seeking out an opportunity to do an externship at the hospital that I work at, and actually the unit that I work on right now. So I did an externship there for probably almost a year before I graduated. It was my senior year of nursing school, and I got to work there and train for the job that I wanted to do for a year, get to see everything, and then I ended up just getting hired to the same unit that I did the externship on.
So that was probably so good for you, because it seems like you're the type of person that thrives actually being in the environment, not like from a textbook, like being alongside someone, witnessing it firsthand, trying to determine what actions you should take, watching and learning. Like, you're someone that you just kind of thrive in the chaos. Like, you need to be in it to really feel confident that you can handle it, you know? So you get through that. You graduate college. It's time to become a nurse full time. Now, what timeline is this? Was this prior to the pandemic that you had graduated and you became a nurse?
I graduated right in the middle of it. So my senior year of nursing school, everything shut down, and I had no clinical for a year. So no hands-on experience, other than I was so lucky to get this externship, because all of our clinical was online. We would do an online simulation, and it would be like you have to click the hi button to your patient, like hello, and then click hand sanitizer. It was just so different. It was not something I was really benefiting from, honestly, but it was the best that they could do because we weren't allowed to have clinicals in the hospital. So I graduated and then got thrown right into COVID. So it was just, it's so different from even what I'm doing now. It was just a totally different environment, honestly. It was just, you were just thrown into the chaos. There was no staff. There was no one there. So it was just kind of like baptism by fire. You're going to sink or swim.
And at that time, I mean, it was considered like what they were saying about COVID and how catastrophic it was going to be and how brutal it was going to wipe everybody out. That had to be a little terrifying. I mean, you made the decision to go into medical school, and then a pandemic of that proportion is going to hit the nation that they're comparing to like the Spanish flu that killed tens of millions of people. And all of a sudden you're on the front lines. Like, that's like where you're going to interact every day. You had already, were you here still when the pandemic started, or had you already transitioned out?
Nope, I was here still.
So when we closed, you were still working at the front desk. Mm-hmm. And then when we reopened, did you come back?
Yes.
Man, my memory is just, I can't place exact things.
Yeah.
So when I challenged the governor and reopened the building, you were through that period. You were still here with us. Mm-hmm. Ooh, what a time that was. Let's never live through that again, actually. So from your perspective, a woman that was in the middle of the battle, what was it like when the whole world shut down, when you were going to be in the center of that? What were your thoughts and feelings at the time? And then, like, how did that change, I guess, over time? That's a point in history that, like, we're going to tell our children about, our grandchildren about forever. Like, 2020 was a wild year. Just as much detail as you can remember. Like, what was it like? Were there bodies hitting the floor all around you all the time? Young, healthy people with certain conditions. Like, what was 2020 like through the eyes of someone that, like, I saw it sitting in here. You saw it on the front lines. What was it like for you?
It's a lot to explain. I feel like it doesn't even feel like a year. It feels like it just absorbed like 4 years, and like time just flew by. It feels like it took forever, but it was really, really hectic. Everyone was just really, I think, nervous because it's always scary when it's something you know nothing about. So like then versus now, it was where I worked, it was really bad, but I also work in the ICU, so I see like the worst of the worst people with tons and tons of other comorbidities. So it's a little bit different, but it was just hectic. I remember I started on my unit for my externship, and everyone that worked there, when I started, there's maybe just a couple people left. Like, everyone either left for travel nursing or quit nursing. Everyone just completely left. So it was really hectic with the turnover of the staff, and then the patients were extremely sick. So it was just hectic. What is like the best way to describe it? I don't even know how to describe it. I can see it in my head, but to put it into words is really difficult.
Yeah, I just want to capture as much as you can, because like that's a moment in history that is just, it's like I said, it's monumental. It's a very important time, and it's a time that we have to learn lessons from. We have to remember in as much detail as possible exactly what 2020 was, because that's how you learn from things. That's how you prepare for the future. That's how you figure out the next time that the world turns upside down, you can have a better grip on maybe even just looking at things through a different lens, or asking different questions, or, et cetera. So when did it start to calm down? When did life start to return to any form of normal? Like, because you alluded to initially, you said then versus now. Like, obviously you view, like, I just read the most recent CDC protocols and procedures, or whatever you'd want to call it, recommendations around coronavirus. And they're like, don't test people without symptoms. Unvaccinated people have the exact same recommendations as vaccinated people. A whole list of things that are just like comical to me, because I'm like, things were so blown out of proportion from my perspective. And I understand caution. I understand, like, if you don't know what's going on, you don't want your friends to die. You don't want random people to get injured. Like, I closed the gym down, you remember, for 6 weeks. And because I thought, oh my God, like 1 in 10 people are toast. Like, this is going to be, you know what I mean? 3 to 10% mortality rate was the statistics that the news was saying over and over. 3 to 10% mortality rate. That is horrifying. I was like, oh my God, like, we're about to see a cataclysmic event. And then it changed over time. When did things start to settle? What are the lessons that you pulled from that period? What are the things that, like, you'll remember forever from that? What are just anything you'd like to capture about this? Because I'm speaking to someone that you were on the front lines. I was not. I was in a sanctuary. So just anything that you want to say, or lessons captured, or moments, or vivid things you remember in detail, perspectives then that have changed so much compared to perspectives now. Just anything else before we go past 2020.
Well, just to put the then versus now into perspective, we don't get any time off if you have COVID as a healthcare worker.
You don't even get time off.
No, wear a mask and show up.
So you can be infected and sick with COVID.
I mean, you can, if you're symptomatic, like you can still take sick time, but like before they would be like, do not come in, like you get this excused amount of time. Now it's just, can you come in?
Is it just kind of like a standard viral infection? Although it was a bad strain, but like coronaviruses and influenzas have been around for probably all of existence, and people get sick. And the best defense you have against viruses is probably being as healthy as you can be. And like, that's what we used to believe. In 2019, we would be like, hey, your body kind of has to deal with the virus. You're going to have to, maybe have fluids and rest. And, you might need these things. There might be stuff we can give you to kind of boost your immune response. But like, you've got to kind of get through a viral infection. 2020 was not like that at all. Like, it was like all of the science that had been taught up to that point was like completely forgotten or something, that like that's how you handle virus.
Yeah. It was just a weird period, like trial and error. Like I was so new at the time, so I didn't really know, I guess, any better. We would just like hear things and they'd be like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And everyone would just kind of go with it. Like, I remember hearing from like friends who had siblings who were EMTs, and they'd be like, just intubate anyone with COVID. And like hearing that now is like, oh wow, that's weird.
Isn't that terrifying?
It was just almost like they were so freaked out by it, and there wasn't any, they had no research to go off of, so they were just trying to do the best that they could, but
it sounds like to some degree they were experimenting on people with treatments that might have been worse. Should you intubate me if I have a virus, Courtney?
And there's a lot of stuff too, like it's hard because a lot of like the people that like we take care of are so sick. They have so many different things going on already. So anything that they get is going to be so much worse.
I get that, but you just said you knew an EMT or a friend or like just people in general that might have said like just intubate anyone with COVID. Should I get intubated if I have a virus?
Yeah, there's wild stuff. Even like if you look at some of the medications, like that's why my biggest thing is always, I feel like patients and family members should always kind of just question stuff or ask questions. Same with healthcare workers, but just like nothing comes without risks. So it's always important to question things like medications have side effects. You shouldn't just take medications to take medications, stuff like that. It just seems like the basics to me, that you should always kind of be skeptical. And I know it's not really like what they teach you, but I feel like that was, if anything, the biggest lesson I got out of college. Like my professor would be like, well, why aren't you questioning it? Question this, ask questions. So
nowadays, I remember the media went on a massive campaign against ivermectin. It's a horse dewormer, and they went on a massive campaign against like hydroxychloroquine and some other treatments. Are we using those treatments now? Like if I came in sick with COVID, let's say right now I'm sick with COVID, I come to the hospital, I have some basic symptoms, whatever COVID symptoms would be. They were apparently everything is what I remember. No matter what you had COVID. If I came to you right now, Courtney, I have COVID and I have symptoms, I need treatment. What is the standard treatment now? What would you do for me?
Honestly, like,
I have COVID-19, Courtney.
Big whoop. It really, you might be on some oxygen, but other than that, we don't give any of that stuff, like the ivermectin or anything like that. We would have people coming in like begging for it, bringing in like bottles, thinking if they take a bath in it, it's gonna like help.
You just said on the podcast, let's go back to 2020. We're going to transport us back in time. You and I are going to go there. Big whoop. You have COVID-19. So what? That was the global pandemic. That was where 35 million people went on unemployment. Small businesses got absolutely steamrolled. You could go to McDonald's, you could go to Walmart, you could eat whatever shit you want. You could not. You couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't go outside and be in the park. You can't be gathering in groups. But you're allowed to go to McDonald's and Walmart. But not to James's place, not to small businesses. The reason I'm hitting this so hard is like, this should be a lesson in human history and in people and in general to learn to question things, to realize perspectives can change over time. Like, it's the same virus. What if my body had never, we're going to make a fantasy world, my body had never encountered COVID-19, ever. I was in an isolated bubble. I came to America. I got COVID-19 today. The fact that you're like, okay, like you have an immune response, and that's going to protect you from this virus in most circumstances.
Right. It's worse, it's, for me, it would be like nothing. It's different, I think, for people. I mean, because you have to worry about who you're going to expose to it. Are you going to expose your 98-year-old grandmother to it? Like, that's very, very serious. So
what about
not
influenza?
Not to say it's not important, but exactly, there's tons of things that you can give to your family members that are also extremely dangerous. So I think it's keeping in mind it's not just one virus, it's everything. You should care that much about everything. You don't want to get the people around you sick, and I just think that a lot of people don't take that very seriously, and it just got kind of like blown up all over COVID. But I mean, in general, there's so many other diseases that you can pass on to your at-risk population that are also extremely serious.
Can you live with that guilt? Courtney, how many people have you killed by giving them influenza? How many people have you hurt by spreading a virus to them? How should you live differently? What should you be doing? Because who's to say you're not currently today going to infect someone? Can you should that guilt be placed upon you?
I mean, if you know that you're sick, you should, you know what I mean? Like, sniffling, stay home. Like, that drives me crazy when people show up and, like, even people show up to work and they have, like, the sniffles, and it's like, all right, stay home if you're sick. But, like you said, you can't live your whole life in fear of something like a coulda, woulda, shoulda thing. Like, you just can't do that.
100%. And do you think a lot of the health issues that plague this country, a lot of the reasons people end up in the ICU to see you, a lot of the chaos that they have to endure, in my opinion, and this might piss some people off, a lot of this is self-inflicted. A lot of this is lifestyle. A lot of this is the way that people eat, the way that people exercise, the way that people live their lives, the stress levels that they carry, what they do with their body and mind. Like, being in the, and I'm not in the healthcare industry, so you could say, no, like, really it's more genetics on what plagues people. For the average person, if they eat a decent diet, they exercise, they take care of their mental health, they take care of their physical health, they get plenty of fluids and hydration, would it solve a lot of the issues that you witness in the ICU?
I 100% think that it would. And I won't try to, like, dive into solving the world's problems, because I know there's more to it. But at, like, just a basic level, 100% what you said is correct. But I know there's more factors. Like you said, genetics can be involved. You can be predisposed to things. Things happen. You might not even know it. For example, my dad was adopted, so I have no idea what would genetically I would be predisposed to. Possibly a lot of things, but like you said, just living a healthy lifestyle. I know it's easier said than done. Then you get into, like, the economics of it and poverty and all that. I'm not even going to try to dive into it. I know there's a lot of factors, especially I feel like where I work, it's just we serve a poor community. So there's a lot of factors and levels to it that can affect someone's health. So I won't pretend like, oh, it's just easy if you would just exercise and eat healthy. Like, no, food's expensive. I get it. But at a basic level, I would agree diet and exercise would make a huge difference for a lot of people.
And unfortunately, you're so right. And I know what you're speaking to, and I know what you're protecting. Like, I understand the asterisk you're putting on the statement 100%, but, like, who told you that life was going to be easy? Like, you've got to embrace it. Like, if you want to get your life together, especially if you were born in poverty, or you were born to very little means, or you were born in a really rough community or another country. Like, I mean, even if you got America, you rolled pretty damn high on the, like, privilege chart, if you wanted to call it that. Like if you were born in America, you are already way better off than a lot of places that you could have been born in, situations you could have been born into. And it's like, yeah, you might have the deck stacked against you tremendously, but like life's not easy and it's not meant to be easy. And a lot of the times the things that you don't want to do are the most crucial things for you to do. So it's like when I say a message like, you know, yeah, you could solve a lot of your health issues if you, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm saying it's probably worth it. You want to live a better life. You want to be able to see your children longer. You want to not become a slave to alcohol and drugs and all these things. It's going to be a damn hard road. To sit in your own pain and not cope with alcohol or not cope with drugs or not fall into terrible decisions out of desperation, that's going to be way harder. Mm-hmm. It'd be way easier if you have a ton of things going on to go home and get smashed every night and be able to turn your brain off than it would be to sit in the pain of the realities of your life and try to figure out how can I make these better? How can I get around better people? How can I start to develop my ability to communicate? How can I start to deal with the past trauma and damage that I've gone through? But like people from the gutter have made it out from the bottom. And oftentimes we're most inspired by people that come from the bottom. We're not even the most inspired by someone that was like trust fund baby that had every spoon, you know, given to them and they built this incredible life and you're like, wow, like you really had to struggle for that, didn't you? We are inspired by people that overcome the odds. So anytime, I'm not saying you rebutted me, but anytime there's like that, like, yeah, but like people have it hard. Yeah. But it's like you got one shot at this thing and we don't know if there's a chapter 2. Like you can have it hard now or you can have it hard for the rest of your life because you never took on the obligations and responsibilities that could have tried to build you up.
Yeah. I feel like you said, being healthy is almost, if you change the way that you look at it, is almost an investment in yourself, because people don't realize just not working out or not being healthy, it, like I even said, well, stuff's expensive. Well, so are medical bills, so is insurance, so is all this prescription coverage. So if you invest in your health now, you're going to have a happier life later and probably a lot less medical bills, because it's not cheap to come and see me.
Working out is hard, but how hard is dying of something from obesity? How hard are the people's lives in their last moments when their body fails them?
It's terrible.
So it's like, yeah, it would be hard to get yourself together. Do you know what road you're walking down? So like, yeah, you can take the easy comfort each day right now. Like just eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, consume as much alcohol as you want, do these things. It makes you feel good in the moment, but you might be walking down a road to a hell that you can't imagine. You've probably witnessed it. You've probably seen some people in a form of hell that people can't imagine. And if we could take their consciousness now and transport it 15 years down the road at, hey, this is where your life choices are going to lead you to. I want you to you're going to be into the mind of this person. You're going to be in this hospital bed, slowly watching these charts, slowly watching everything you've had crumble away alone in pain, suffering. That's where you can get to. So when people say things like, yeah, but it's going to be hard to like, what's the alternative? How do you manage that type of mental, like, I would struggle deeply witnessing people's final moments on a regular basis, or witnessing that's just a little baby that was born and raised in a different location that grew up to a set of parents or maybe not parents, and now they're the person in that hospital bed that is waiting for their final heartbeat. How do you manage that? How are you able to see that? Has it made you jaded? Has it made you callous?
A little bit, yeah. It's difficult, but I like being able to be the person that's there for someone, because a lot of times, like, people have nobody. So there'll be no one coming to see them, and they're just passing all alone. And that's so sad. So I'm glad that I get to be the person that's there for them, whether they're consciously even able to be aware that I'm there. I'm glad that I can be there, but it is hard to see and to look at. And there's almost like, with our job, there's a certain amount of like compartmentalization that you have to be able to do your job, be good at your job, and then mix in that little bit of compassion. You have to have both, and it's sometimes hard to balance to have all of that.
How do you keep yourself in good mental health? Like, what are the things that you're doing? Because if you don't make yourself a priority enough, it'll eat away at you over time, and it'll chip away at you. And like, compartmentalization is fine,
Yeah.
but you got to empty out those bins, or you have to sort them correctly. Otherwise, it's going to one day, you're going to have too much in there. The storage is going to be full, and your body, spirit, mind, or whatever is going to be like, no. How are you taking care of your mental health?
I think it definitely helps. I know where I work, like, we're always working as a team, so you're never doing that stuff alone. Like, even like when you're going through that, you're not alone. Your coworkers are there with you, and we all kind of help each other out through that. And it's nice to be able to kind of debrief and talk about those things with people that understand, because you can't really talk about details with people at home. So it's nice to be able to kind of talk through things there, like, oh, could we have done anything different? Kind of, we always try to debrief after situations like that. But just kind of taking time to myself. I like to read a lot still, so I'll sit outside on the patio, just kind of think about things, read, spend time with my dog, all that type of stuff, but nothing really special in particular.
Shout out to Gucci.
Yep.
Gucci. That puppy is like the love of your life. Oh my gosh, that's your child basically. Are you in therapy? Do you do anything for your mental health outside of work? Do you
Probably
just
should be, but no. No. I know that's definitely a positive thing, and people should do it, but no, nurses are sometimes the worst patients, so no, I'm not.
Yeah, you need to prioritize your mental health, because you're being there for everybody else, and you're doing the best you can to give their quality of life any boost you can before the end. But it's like, you need to be there for you. If you don't do that, it's going to chip away at you slowly, and you're not going to be you'll wake up one day and be like, whoa, am I the broken one? Like, and that's the thing that I would worry about on a regular basis, because you are seeing a lot of darkness, and you need to balance that out with a lot of light, and it's super important. So Brock is in the same industry. He's also a nurse, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you think that helps tremendously in the fact that like you guys have the same thing, or do you think it's difficult because he is being jaded and calloused to some degree by what he witnesses, and so are you? Or is it a beneficial thing that you're able to understand each other's worlds, or just et cetera?
I think it's mostly positive, just because it's the other person understands what you're going through. So it's nice because you're both there. You can kind of talk through things, and they know exactly what you're talking about. Like, versus coming home and someone has no idea what you're talking about. They're like, okay, yeah, whatever. That sounds crazy. That's wild. But they know exactly what you're talking about, exactly what you're going through. But I mean, it is hard sometimes. Because like you said, it's just difficult on both people, but I think it's definitely a positive thing, just because you both kind of go through the same thing. Like, I feel like the people that I work with, we have a special bond that we don't have with anyone else, and most of us are really close friends even outside of work, just because of all the things that we kind of see together too.
That makes sense. That really makes sense, that you would almost form like a clique with those people, and you would cherish and value those people. And if you can find a way to integrate them into more of your personal life, and like you guys, you're going out together, you're having dinners together, you're doing small vacations together, that's probably very, very good, because it's like, that's your squad. Those are your people. This is my squad.
Yeah.
That's your squad.
Yeah.
And being able to depend on the people close to you can help you endure difficult situations so much more efficiently. It's like, even if you're struggling, if you've got people that got your back, or they're there for you, or they genuinely care about you, or they value you being there with them, that's a huge, combat to the darkness. So let's talk about, by the way, you were nervous about this podcast. We've filmed an hour effortless. Like, we've been going for an hour.
I feel a little bit better now.
Effortlessly. Let's talk about, how old are you now, Courtney?
I just turned 25.
You're 25. What does the next 2 years look like? 5 years? Like, what are you working towards? Is your goal to just stay at being a nurse and then, build up other different levels? Like, I don't really understand any of that. And like, you and Brock have been together forever now. Are you getting married sometime in the near future? Are you already married and I somehow missed that?
No.
Etc. Just kind of paint for me the future. If we were to podcast 5 years from now, who is Courtney? What are you doing? Where are you living? What are your dreams? Do you have dreams outside of being a nurse, etc.?
It's hard because I'm still not even 100% sure exactly where I want to be. I know wherever I end up, I definitely want to travel a lot. I want to get to see all around the world, do things I haven't done before. So that's really my number one priority. As far as like my job, I'm not sure yet. I like what I do. I could go back to school. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with that yet because there's pros and cons to everything. If I go back to school, all of that, just kind of have to think about it and plan. But I'm not sure yet. I'm just kind of gaining experience right now, and I don't want to rush into anything too soon.
So last thing I'll ask you about, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's perfectly fine, but you recently lost your father. And that is like a moment in life that you're a different person forever now. And I lost my mother when I was young, you know that. And it's like when you don't have a parent and it's like, it's forever. And it's like, you have to cherish what you have or whatever that is. But like, it's a massive impact on you as a person. And it feels like I remember a lot of the life's not fair. Why did this happen to me? I went through all kind of like, I don't deserve it, whatever it is. But it's like, it's one of those harsh realities that you just have to accept and do the best that you can with the situation as it is. Just how are you not at a rock bottom is the question I guess I'm going to ask, because like, I didn't know that when you came into the studio today. I had no idea that. And then in casual conversation, I don't even know what we were talking about. You were like, my dad just passed away. And that hit me like, how the fuck are you just like here and functioning and just not a complete mess? And it might be that compartmentalization that you've had to do from being a damn nurse where you're just like, well, deal with that one later. We'll go down to that road. The fact you're not in therapy, you don't really have any certain thing. When did that happen? How did you get through that? Anything you'd want to talk about? Just the loss of a parent is one of the most crippling things that could happen to someone. I said maybe a loss of a child being something else that's comparable if you had a child. And how are you not at a rock bottom right now, girl?
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm at my top right now either. I'm a very private person, so I don't really it's hard for me to show a lot of emotion or kind of talk about things. So it's not really something I necessarily advertised when it happened. And I was just so busy trying to kind of manage everything and kind of do everything for him that I could. But I just kind of put my own life on pause. So just tried to kind of get back into it. It definitely hasn't been easy. I definitely feel more distant, but I'm just trying to keep doing things and stay busy, I guess. I don't want to just sit home and think about it and miss out on everything or not be there for my friends and things like that. So, but it's definitely been really, really hard.
So you've just had to keep yourself moving. You just have to keep going forward. And really as harsh of a reality as that is, that's almost all you can do through the worst tragedies. It's it's horrible. Yeah, it's painful. Yeah, but what can you do? Stop fighting life?
Right.
Stop moving forward. You just have to endure the battles that come your way and, pull the lessons you can and appreciate. You had a lot of life with him. You had up to, was it recent?
Yeah, he passed away on Easter of this year.
Extremely recent. But you had 25 years of life where that man probably loved the hell out of his daughter. You got to grow up with a father who, was there for you in sports and would make sure that, you get to live a life knowing that your father loved you very much and you know, if there's a chapter 2, like he would be proud of the woman that you are and that you're moving towards the future. And that's like, I guess, the piece that you have to accept. Do you feel like you've kind of been going through this as a family? Because like I can't imagine how devastating that must be for your mother. Your mother's not that old, and your mother used to come in here and she would bring stuff up and supplies and talk for a little bit. And like your mom is a very vibrant woman, and like I just can't imagine like if Stacy was to pass away or something like that, like just the devastation that would do. And it's permanent, and you may be able to deal with it well mentally, but like your mother might have a completely different struggle. Have you gotten closer with her? Have you guys been working to get through the situation together, etc.?
Yeah, it's nice. I get to hang out with her all the time. We do dinners and things like that. Been helping her with like projects that they wanted to get done together. So we've just been kind of getting everything kind of completed that he always wanted to. Little projects here and there, but it's definitely been really hard for her because they were like high school sweethearts. So they've been together like their whole life. They were only, I think, a couple years when he was in the military that they weren't together. And they've been together ever since. They were each other's best friend, and they did everything together. So it was super hard for her. And it still is. She's just lonely, but with my work schedule, I try to be there as much as I can, but I work a week straight, 7 days in a row. So it's every other week where I can kind of be there for her too, but it's definitely been really difficult.
Your mother is one hell of a fighter and warrior to continue to move forward. Like, you know, I mean, because life, when it hits you like that, it can cripple you and just make you stop. Be like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like high school sweethearts, because I remember that. I remember you telling me that. I remember you telling me that like you used to live in Pine Creek and your family was, you know, like your mother and father were high school sweethearts that married each other. And like, that's the American dream. That is like the true old-fashioned family story. They had one young girl, and they poured into that young girl, and she grew up to be successful, and she's a nurse, and like they have the traditional story, you know what I mean? And like, it's amazing to hear that your mother is still finding a way to carry on. It's amazing to hear that you're right there for her in that, and she's gonna have to fight that battle now forever, you know. And hopefully, she can get to a place where the pain from things like that never goes away. Never. It will hurt for the rest of your life. But you can get to a point where, like, you cherish the good and you remember all the wonderful and you're thankful that you got to spend every moment that you could with that person, you know, and even though you don't realize how fleeting things are.
Yeah.
Me and John Krasinski you remember him, you remember John? We were recently talking, and he said way back in the day there was this one, like, energy drink commercial where it came on TV and it was, like, 78 summers. That's all you get. And he said that hit him so hard.
Wow.
Where he's like, it's haunted me when I recognize like how fleeting time really is, because it seems like life's a long time until you break it down to like 78 summers. And to think about that, like me, I have like on average less than 50 summers left in my life. And it's like that can reinvigorate gratitude, the love for life, cherishing small moments and spending time with people that you love. Because we all get so busy.
Yeah.
We get so busy and we're chasing dollars and we're trying to be this and do that and do these things. And it's like, if you don't remember to just take a deep breath and look around and appreciate your life, 78 summers goes awful quick.
Yeah.
So just, girl, anything else you'd like to say on the podcast? Anything you'd like to say, you know, to family or friends that might have been there for you or watch this, just anything else you'd like to capture in this moment in time. And then hopefully 5 years down the road, you know, we'll do another podcast and we'll capture how life worked out and maybe decisions you made, unexpected things that are coming down the road, and just et cetera. If not, you know, I've really enjoyed sitting and talking with you.
I guess thank you to everyone. Everyone's been great through everything. My friends have been there for me, and I really appreciate it. I know it's been hard with me working so much, so I appreciate everyone putting up with my schedule. Like you said, it's important to remember to kind of slow down, and life's not about work. even though my work is important that I do, that's not what it's about. It's about family and friends and experiencing life. And I'm definitely going to go home and think about that quote right there.
I know, he bothered me with it. And I'm like, damn you, John, because it pops up in my head often, especially I'm 35. And it's like I still feel young. I'm living my dream. Like, I feel like the most blessed man in the world. Like, I feel so fortunate. I'm very thankful. But I tell you what, every day that ticks off the calendar, I'm like, what in the world? Like, I'm 35? How? I was 25 the other day. So it's just having a sense of gratitude and remembering that will make you enjoy the little moments way more. And you know what? A lot of things and stress and situations that are pretty trivial, that are pretty minuscule, like the little argument that you have with your significant other 6 months ago that was a big deal. If you looked at life like this and you realize, like, moments are fleeting, and what if that was the last moment you two shared together? It's like you would just live life a different way, and that's like something we should all try to do. So I enjoy you coming in today and, having this conversation with me. I know you were nervous for the podcast, but it was effortless. That's why when my response to you was so like, whatever, Courtney, because it's just a dialogue between friends. And, I hope that you've dropped some insight for other people, and it was great to hear your story and your perspectives. And, we'll wrap this episode up.
Thank you.